Hello and welcome to another episode of Creative Career Talk. My name is Andrew MacLiam. I'm a professional actor and qualified career coach working with creatives and artists throughout the artistic and cultural industries. And today I am joined. I'm joined by. I'm just very impressed to be in your presence already. Edward MacLiam, actor extraordinaire. Ed, how you doing?
I'm very well, Andrew. I'm very well, thanks. I've just managed to put my son down to bed about 10, 15 minutes ago. This is where I might also usually have my nap time. So I'm forsaking that to speak with you.
Well, thanks, and if you need to duck out, do that.
Thanks very much.
Do that
Okay,
indeed. Jeez.
I will.
So yeah, I mean, whereabouts are you in London at the moment?
I'm in West London. I'm towards Maida Vale area, which sounds very salubrious, and it is actually very nice around there. So yeah, we've been here for a while. And I'm just actually I have a nice view outside my window actually. So I'm gazing over some trees, watching the breeze trickle through. So it's very nice. It's quite scenic.
I'm a little jealous, to be honest with you. I mean, people's perspective of London living outside of London is you're just living in, a concrete jungle, a far cry from Mallow, which is where I gather your origins begin.
Yes, that's where I'm from. A Cork man. I don't sound like a Cork man, but I actually am. I was born, bred, and nourished there. I wasn't educated there. I was educated in. I went to school, a boarding school in Roscrea, County Tipperary. But then I went to university in Cork for 3 years, and then I came over to London. And I've lived in the UK now longer than I've actually lived in Ireland. But it's in my genes, it's in my bones, it's in my blood. Can't get rid of it.
even if you'd want to,
Yeah, even if I wanted to, I couldn't.
I mean, it's a big thing, isn't it? I think for a lot of actors, especially Irish actors, I talk to, and I have the same thing being from Waterford, not necessarily having the same accent as I did when I was 15. But I remember a voice teacher at drama school saying quite wonderfully that your accent is the story of where you have been. And so it incorporates where you grew up, where you've traveled to, the work you've done. And that's always made me feel a bit more all right with not sounding as I did when I was 15 in Waterford. But so, yeah, our series of talks are around the question of what it means to live well as a creative in the world today, which during COVID is a particularly challenging question, maybe. But we're looking at it in a really sort of generalized sense. But to kick us off, I'm always really interested in the beginning for people when they started to choose to go ahead and do the thing that they're doing, because I think that's quite a fundamental time, quite a pinnacle moment for a lot of people. So, yeah, for you, when did you intuitively know that you wanted to be an actor professionally?
I suppose I'd tinkered with a lot of it when I was a kid. I was always interested in it, and I suppose I grew up, reading a lot, and I liked drama. And I suppose when I was at university, I suppose it kind of came into play. I remember at the time, in my first year, I went to study English and history. And in my first year, the Drama Society, I'd heard of it. So I felt inclined to go along for an audition for Peter Shaffer play, Equus. And I auditioned for the main part, sort of Dysart, the psychiatrist. And I got it, to my surprise. And without wanting to sound pretentious, I remember the rehearsal process went on for about 3 or 4 weeks. And coming up towards the production week, I realized I'd neglected to learn the lines. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't know if you know the play, but it's quite sizable. And certainly that role is quite sizable. And I remember going out on the first night and, just the light being there. And I remember thinking, Jesus, I really don't have a clue what I'm on about or what I'm doing. But, I went with it. So not to say I largely improvised the entire play, but I improvised, I suppose, large amounts of it, large chunks of it. But I suppose at that time in my life, I was 18. And having gone through education, I suppose I hadn't had a very settled education in many respects, that I didn't feel very comfortable at school. in a class environment. I enjoyed sports and things like that, and a little bit of drama as well. So I guess when I just remember going out, I remember having this instinctive feeling of, I guess, just getting that adrenaline rush. And I suppose you feel also in many ways, it probably sounds ironic given the story that I just told you about not knowing the lines. I weirdly felt in control of the narrative in a sense, you know what I mean? So it's a boost to your self-esteem and your ego. Just, your ego is sated in many ways. You feel very empowered. And I suppose I got hooked from there, really. I got addicted then. That was the point of my addiction. And I'm coping with it ever since.
I think that's going to be the tagline, isn't it, for this one? Coping with that addiction for life.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds disturbing that your first experience on stage is the universal nightmare for all actors.
Yeah.
That experience of, it's somehow getting to opening night and you not quite knowing the lines.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in, you said that you were inclined to go and audition for this thing, and not only audition, but for the main part as well. I mean, what was that inclination?
I suppose that inclination was just a desire to want to, just curiosity. Mm-hmm. And I suppose it's a curiosity that's never left, you know what I mean? Becoming a professional actor and things like that ever since. It's that inclination, that desire to want to imagine and to create. I've always been very interested in human ordinariness. You know what I mean? You know, the subtleties of what make people work, their machinations, what's going on, what's happened in their life. You know, I've always been extremely curious about that, the minutiae, those tiny little details, mining that scene as much as possible. So I've always been curious about that. You know, that thing in drama of like people being pulled between two polar opposites, you know what I mean? You know, what will win out? And they're constantly, like a pendulum, I suppose, constantly vacillating between one and the other. You know, which side of the fence are you going to fall? I mean, that's you know, and just that's teetering on that. That's what's always attracted me, I suppose. And it's, you know, it's a fickle mistress in many respects, you know. You have great times and you have fallow times. And then when it's ready to invite you back and it says, come on, you know, off you trot, in some ways. Yeah.
I mean, there's a clear distinction that you're making there between, I think, the work of an actor and the world of acting. But really interesting to hear how that sort of curiosity about ordinariness was the kind of lead into, well, ordinary human behavior was the lead into doing that play, which then sort of gave you that sense of, like you were saying, that natural sort of ego thing that comes with being on stage, but also you were saying this control of the narrative. So what exactly is that?
I don't know. It's just that thing of just, see, it seems self-explanatory to me, but you know, you are in a sense part of, you know, you have a narrative and you know where you're going, you know what you're doing, you know where the endpoints are, you know what the beats are in some respects. You know, the curtain comes down or the play ends at 10:05. But I suppose the challenge is within that always is to try and surprise yourself, isn't it? Mm-hmm. In that moment, to allow yourself the space to be prepared to be surprised. Mm-hmm. You know, you are in control to some extent, but you have to try and surprise yourself. You know, you can't surprise an audience if you don't surprise yourself. You know, you can't convince others, I think, until you first convince yourself. So laying yourself bare and open and receptive to stimuli and just, you know, reacting to what's in front of you. Mm-hmm. And, you know, being prepared to fail in some respects, responding to that element of danger. It's very arousing.
That's exactly how I feel, Ed. I'm very aroused by the idea of stage work.
Yeah.
And so you'd done Equus, and you mentioned university. So I know you went to RADA, and did you spend to go to university before RADA, or?
Yeah, I went to university before that, and when I left university, I was kind of bouncing around. I wasn't doing a huge deal. I mean, I graduated with a degree, and I suppose I knew at that point that I wanted, I suppose, to become an actor. I mean, I didn't practically know how one went about becoming an actor, and I did some, semi-professional, I suppose, professional jobs to an extent in Cork, in local drama, companies. And I remember at the time I was doing a production of Lute at the Cork Arts Theatre, the Cat Club. And I was a member of the cast, Damien Carney, another Irish actor, and he was auditioning for drama schools. And during the run of the play, he was accepted into RADA. So RADA was in my mind. I thought, okay, I know RADA, I know of RADA now. So I went over to London and I just auditioned and I got in. So I thought, right, well, I suppose this is it now. I just have to take this on. So I went there. I was in RADA from 1998 to 2001. And it was a very challenging experience, but it was quite a brilliant one, really, because I suppose a challenge, you kind of go into these places, I think, with the benefit of hindsight, and they say, right, we know you know how to do it that way. But now try this, 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 and this. And there's a provocation, really. Extend your repertoire, broaden your palette, really challenging you. Can you respond to this? Can you respond to that? So, they throw everything at you. They'll throw Meisner, Stanislavski, Laban, bit of Michael Chekhov, period dancing, flamenco, everything. And it was great. It was great. And I remember, but I do remember a little bit afterwards when I came out, I suppose. It did, I suppose I was a little clouded in a respect of thinking there was so much technique. And I suppose you think, well, I suppose with benefit of hindsight again, it was a sense of thinking, oh, I have to channel everything through the prism of that technique. You know what I mean? That the work must come through that funnel. And I suppose it takes a while to let go of that and to return to your instincts and to instinctively respond to things organically and just there in the moment. But there was some, I had my peers in my class, there were some wonderful people. And they still are. They're still working in the business. And there were some wonderful teachers as well. Really, really outstanding teachers. There's one, actually, I went to one of his classes there in the past 2 months, I think it was. His name is John Beschizza. And he works with a lot with Meisner and Stanislavski and all these kind of things. He's a lot of past students who've worked with him still reference and very dignified character, what I mean? Just a tremendous teacher, tremendous. And sometimes when I'm in professional situations and I'm doing things, you just kind of go, yeah, and you've done something, you think, oh yeah, Beschizza wouldn't stand for that shit. So you have to get back to him, come on, what are you at? What are you about? So yeah, there's a lot that stands to me from them. It's really, really good. Really good.
I think there's something really, really inspiring when you come across, whether they be other actors or teachers of acting, that go about their work with that sort of level of dignity. I think there's a lot of, quite often there's a feeling, at least that I've encountered, which is, well, look, we're all playing, we're all having fun. Let's try and make something of this. Let's try and do our best. But that sense of real respect and sort of dignity around what they're doing, and a certain level of accountability and sort of responsibility about it. When I have seen it, and it's rare, and I'd like to do it more myself, but when I have seen it, it's made me sit up straight and go, raise my game. I think there's sometimes, whether it be a teacher or another actor that I see working in that way, I kind of go, oh, okay. Well, the bar is all right, we're playing, we'll see. And it's sort of, it's a real sea change to see that. But I'm really interested in, and maybe it was as easy and as wonderfully flowing as it sounds, but the trip from you doing that at 18, doing Equus into RADA, sounded quite easily flowing. I mean, were there any sort of obstacles at that stage for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, obstacles, I suppose you would think in terms of, trying to put that past your parents, you want to do what? I think this is a very common one. Um, I think it's a tough one for parents to deal with. And when I look back on it, it's a tremendously brave thing for parents to do. But my parents were always very interested in the arts. You know what I mean? They really enjoyed going to the theatre. And they came, my mother is in her 80s now. My father passed away in 2003. But, they came from that, they grew up in that environment where there wasn't TV. There was maybe radio. So the sense of conversation or exchange, cultural exchange between people in Ireland was, as in most communities I'd assume, was very, very vibrant. You know what I mean? So they had a great sense of theatre, and they had such an eclectic range of friends. You know what I mean? It was always very interesting people that they knew, and they were very curious about people in that respect as well. So in some ways, it felt like a natural step to take. But it was a tough one for them to deal with, and there's the financial part of it. I was lucky that when I went to RADA, I got a scholarship that covered my fees and part of my subsistence. So, but still, I did work in the interim as well, but it was challenging. But by and large, they've got to see me work professionally quite a lot in theatre, TV, film, and other mediums. But yeah, it was challenging. But my father worked for the Bank of Ireland for many, many years before he retired. He took, well, not early retirement, but he was, I think, in his mid to late 50s when he retired. But he always said to us, it's, if you can, do something in life that you like. I don't think he'd expect me to turn around and say, "Well, I'd really like to be an actor." But no, I can be, I can never be more. Try to be very grateful to them. I think they just kind of go, "Look, just go with it, keep going with it. You've made your choices now." But it's yeah. It was, and also, I suppose, coming to London, I worked in London for a summer, and I stayed on for a while, so I had a sense of what the city was. But it was, it was quite a contrast to London. It sounds like a moving. It was London in Ireland of the 1950s. It wasn't, but it was quite a change, quite a cultural change. There isn't anywhere in Ireland that's like London, the crossroads of the world in many respects. So it was quite a cultural change. But it was great. It was invigorating. I lived in Soho. I was talking to this with someone the other day, and it's when I first came to London. I was living in Sunderland in Soho. I was just like, "Oh my God, what is this place?" It's absolutely mental. There's hookers everywhere. You know what I mean? It's nuts. But no, it was great. It was great. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like quite a jump, Mallow to Soho, and it also sounds like you're jumping right in the shoes of sort of those wonderfully talented and reckless actors of the 70s and 80s who just would party. And it sounds very much like that sort of lifestyle. But it also sounds like you were given the door was opened a little bit by parents having that interest in the arts and that eclectic mix of friends. But also, you were given an inch and you took a mile.
I took a mile, yeah.
Yeah.
I really did.
I mean, it sounds like your experience at RADA was really good, really positive. I mean, you talk about that sort of wide variety of different forms that you were thrown into.
Yeah.
And saying try some lavender. It sounds like that was, and it sounds like also that the people you're working with there, both students and teachers, had that sense of, I guess, professional dignity, maybe, and that people were really trying to, work to the highest level they could. I'm interested in, I think, and yeah, there's another person on one of the talks, another drama school teacher who makes a really great point around the change between amateur and professional, because for a lot of actors, they have that experience like you did with Equus of, well, this is what acting is like for me, this is how I do it. And there's a certain confidence that comes with that. And then there's different demands placed by the professional world. So
Yeah.
either in drama school or leaving, there's new additions to be made, and that's a change. What for you were those new requirements that you had to take on board as an actor, leaving drama school to enter the profession?
I think there's a sense of responsibility, isn't there? You know, turning turning up on time, you know, and just doing the job, fulfilling the brief in some respects. And I suppose it, you know, in a sense, yeah, I don't know, it's a tricky one to answer, because it's, you know, professionalism or in the environment that you're working in, you know, I suppose in a cocooned environment of a drama school, you know, you're allowed, you know, you're brought through a process, and I suppose you're nurtured in some respects. Whereas, you know, when you're working on a TV set or something, it's like, you know, I need this now. You just got to execute it. I don't care about your process. I don't care about what you're thinking. I don't care about your objective, what's at stake. You know, that's your department. Look after it. Just do it. You know, make it look good. I need something for the edit. I need this, and this, and I need it now. And whatever you thought about previously that you wanted to do, forget about it. Just do what I want. Listen, that's me talking, maybe being negative, but talking. It's not like that. But I mean, my experiences of working in theatre, a little bit to my disappointment, I didn't work as much or as enough, I think, in theatre that I'd like to have done. At times, I feel that's, you know, an actor's medium. I find TV and film in a sense an editor's medium. You know what I mean? It's sort of interdepartmental, you know, and you're in, you know, look after your department. Or I suppose if you're in theatre, there is, broadly speaking, more of a sense of it being more collegiate. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's hierarchy and everything, but it's more involved in the community, I suppose. But I do, yeah, I think that was the main difference, I suppose, when moving from drama school to working in the profession. You know, it's not it is about you, but it's not about you. I just get on with it and you know, fulfill the brief, I suppose.
I mean, that comes across really clear, and it's really interesting because you have 3 years of drama school of going, well, you know, how do you define your process? What works best for you? And I think you're bang on to suggest, and especially in TV and screen work, the idea of your process isn't really that important to the director or to the editor. Essentially, it's, well, look, your process is your deal. We want you to create.
Yes, it is, and I'm not meaning to sound like I neglect that, not at all. You know, do all that work beforehand. You know, and I still believe, you know, I mean, a lot of these processes, maybe it's going off the point or going off on a tangent in some respects. You know, a lot of the Meisner, the Stanislavski, the Michael Chekhov, whatever you want to employ. It was actually that teacher, John Boskitsa, who said, you know, you use those things when your instincts, or you employ those things when you feel your instincts have broken down. Mm-hmm. You know, your imagination and your instincts, your guts, you know, they're the most powerful tool you have. And if you feel they're not working for you, employ one of those things then. But otherwise, you know, just go with what you're feeling. So often when I'm working on anything, be it TV or theatre or whatever it is, I go off and do a lot of my own work, and I think a lot of actors would do as well. They just go off and do their own work and bring something into the room, you know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's often forgotten in a sense. I mean, the more training, the better, and it's always good to have a variety of things at your hands. But ultimately, the instinctive, sort of intuitive element of what you are as a person and what you bring to acting, I think is probably the best
Yeah.
to start, really. I'm interested in how you saw the industry on leaving drama school. Because, I mean, over the course of a career, I guess, no matter where you are in and whatever sector of the arts, your view on the industry and will change over time. And so I'm interested when you left drama school, how did you see the industry? What were your expectations at that point?
I think being young, I mean, I saw this, I still thought of it as something of a fabled existence, sort of a fabled romantic existence, or sort of everything is possible and achievable. And when you're young in your 20s and you're leaving drama school, you know, there hasn't been a sort of a fine imprint put upon you as to what you are, who you are, what you do. You can, in a sense, be anything really. And then once you're known for doing certain things, you're kind of brought in for doing that sort of thing. So I think then, I mean, there's the core of me is still, you know, you get a little weather beaten down at times by the business and how it responds to you. But there's a core of me that's still optimistic and idealistic, and, you know, thinks that so much is possible, and, you know, it's always still there for grabs. So yeah, I suppose I have modified my vision of it being a sort of a fabled sort of existence. It has changed. It's yeah.
What would you suggest now as a more, I mean, if you were talking to, say, somebody else who's leaving drama school, what would you say is a more useful or realistic view on the industry or expectation to have? So if you found that fabled one was thrilling to live for a while, but not necessarily fully realistic, even if that core, like you say, of optimism, which I think you have to have as an actor to justify it on a daily basis, there has to be that. But what would you say is a more favorable and realistic, I guess, expectation to have on it?
I don't know. I'm sort of reticent. I've always been sort of reticent to offer any kind of advice to young people leaving drama school per se, but I mean, a certain level of business acumen is very helpful. And I remember, I suppose, when I think back on it, and with the benefit of hindsight again, I suppose when I was fresh out of drama school, thinking, you know, you go into meetings thinking, right, people really want to know about me, you know what I mean? Sort of, they really want to know everything about me. And I think you just got to go in there with a certain level of, you know, business savvy and kind of go, right, this is me, and I'm going to this is what I think it is, and I'm just going to go with it. You've got to, you know, in a sense, here's a scene, I'm going to try and solve the issue that's on the play, on the page, and just kind of give it to you and just do what I think. I mean, how they recruit people into jobs nowadays, I mean, has so much changed with social media. Maybe it has. Maybe you have to be an awful lot more savvy about that. I don't really know. I was sort of on the cusp of that generation where, you know, leaving drama school and, you know, investing in a mobile phone was a big thing, you know. But there's a fundamental part of me that feels fashions change, human psychology doesn't. You know, in a sense, it's a sort of, not wanting to put noses out of joint. It's a tarty business in many respects. People respond to different things. Oh, we know that person from that, therefore we'll have them. But I think the work has to be good. You know, you'll get found out in some ways if it's not good, if it's not of a certain standard. But I don't know, has the business become so cosmetic now that that's irrelevant? I don't know. But I mean, I would still encourage people and myself to, you know, work as hard as you can at it. In many ways, both from a business point of view and also on text, whatever it is, or different approaches or different ideas, or just, you know, looking after yourself physically, mentally, vocally, physically, trying to expand or, you know, your repertoire, keep things ticking over as much as possible. I suppose you just to keep as many irons in the fire as you can, you know.
I mean, that's just got to keep you sharp, hasn't it? And there's no ultimately, there's no. I don't think, like you're right to suggest, there's no getting away from the level of quality that is required. I think, irrespective of how many followers you might have, or fundamentally, and I guess you carry that with you into each interview. But yeah, I mean, I definitely would, the idea of a better understanding of sort of the business and how people might interact with you is probably quite useful, because you can easily get lost into well, this is what I can do as an actor, and of course you're in an industry and you're a part of the puzzle. You are not you're not the main oil painter.
No, you know, you've got to, I suppose that's one thing I've noticed as well over time is, you know, I suppose in many ways for actors, maybe it works as well for directors, designers, whatever, but you know what I mean? To keep yourself buoyant in some respects takes a lot of energy. And one of those things that probably gets overly massaged that shouldn't is your ego, you know what I mean? And how you'll try and compensate for situations that didn't go your way. Well, obviously they didn't see the following, or, you know, and you'll start to, you know, build yourself up in that respect, whereas you've got to be a little bit more relative about it as much as possible, and just kind of think there are so many different circumstances outside of which are not in your control. All you can really control is a sense of, there are fewer opportunities than there were before of going into a room and meeting people. It's now, for instance, TV and film, is so much of it is self-tape. But you can control that 2 or 3 minutes, and the rest, you know, send off into the void, and you know, let the gods look after. You know what I mean? But there's a certain freedom, a psychological freedom in that as well, realizing that you can give everything in there and then you can control that moment and then just let go of the rest. You know?
I mean, when you talk about that, you talk about it in a really, what sounds like quite logical way. You know what I mean? It sounds like you've, to a certain extent, divorced the emotional aspects from it to a certain extent that enables you to do it repeatedly. Because I'm sure you've had the same experiences all actors would have had of being sat in a pub with another actor who maybe might not take such an illogical approach to it, and might say, well, I didn't get that part because so-and-so is whatever. And the industry actually as a whole is whatever. And there's a kind of demonizing that can happen. And then there's this sort of justification and, well, I'm a victim because I didn't get this part and there's not parts. And so, yeah, hearing you talk about it, it sounds like you're breaking it down to quite a realistic sort of logical level of going, well, how much control do I have in this and what can I leave go of?
But that's because of constantly going through the emotional process as well, I think, you know what I mean? And, you know, I'm as much to fall victim to that as anyone else, because, you know, you've got to bring, you know, you have to bring yourself to it, don't you? You can't really stand outside it and just throw it up on tape, I suppose. You know, you have to invest in it. But that's, I think, sometimes when I do things, and, you know, I think it's a lot of actors go through long periods of just taping, for instance, and nothing ever coming back. You know, I suppose you have to develop a sense of become more philosophical about it, you know what I mean? And, you know, what will be, and just get back to, you know, enjoying the parts of your life that you can and just let it go. It's very challenging. I think it gets more challenging, I think, as you get older, you know? It's just, yeah, it's challenging. It's always challenging.
And speaking on challenging, I mean, you mentioned a little earlier around maybe to your eyes not doing as much theatre as maybe you would have liked to, which is interesting to hear you say, because I mean, from an outside perspective, looking at the theatre that you have done, like work at the Donmar, the Globe, Almeida, RSC, there's quite a few things in there. From the outside perspective, I might look at that and go, well, you know, it's done a significant amount. And I mean, I'm very interested because I've not worked at the Globe, and I've always heard that as quite an interesting experience as a performer. What was working at the Globe like the first time?
The first time I worked there was 2008. I did a production of The Merry Wives of Windsor. and a play called Liberty about the French Revolution. And it was terrific. It's a terrific experience. It's a challenging space. It's an exposing space. It's a really, really primal and invigorating space as well. It's really exciting. You know, when it's full, you're playing to, I suppose, 1,000 people. And you know, there is an element of snobbery about it. I suppose people think of it as a sort of Shakespeare theme park. But it's a place where, you know, it invites you to be experimental. It invites you to take risk, be dangerous, and go where is risky, because in risk there is reward in some form or another. And I just found it really terrific. That was my first experience. And then my second experience was 2016. I did a production of The Taming of the Shrew with terrific, really terrific Irish director, Caroline Byrne. I think she sees herself as an artist before she thinks of herself as a director. But she was wonderful, really, really wonderful. And I came to it quite late because I think there was another actor had been injured or something. So I was recruited into it after just towards the end of their first week. So I was playing catch up with a huge volume of text. But the company were fantastic. They were all Irish actors. And it was brilliant, really, really, really brilliant. Yeah, it's a fantastic space. Yeah.
I mean, it always, being there always reminds me that you can't sort of escape the liveness at the Globe.
Yeah.
It feels like in other theatres you can hide a little bit in the darkness as an audience member.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm directly held to account in the Globe. They can see you, you can see them, and it feels a lot like I've always imagined it to be risky and experimental in the way that you suggest. It reminds me a little like street theatre, where you can sort of get at people in a way that you can't do in a proscenium arch, where they're safe.
Yeah. The audience, you know, certainly the groundlings feel that they're part of the production, in the sense that they're willing and active participants when called upon, I suppose. Yeah, it's a great place to work, and it's, you know, it's a shame that it's going through difficult times at the moment, as are so many theatres in the UK. But hopefully, touch wood, that might resolve itself, because it would be a shame for all these places to go under. It's almost unthinkable, you know.
I know, yeah. I mean, it's terrifying at the moment, isn't it? Just consider what may or may not happen, and it's that thing again of, well, how much control do you have at the moment on it? And very little, it seems, at the moment, anyway. But I'm really interested, because you've, to my mind, had a really varied career, both in medium and geographically as well. You've worked your way around, and I spent a little time in LA, not a whole lot, but just enough to go to a few auditions and to meet a few casting directors over there and attend a few classes and workshops, just enough to get a feeling of how different it is over there, but not long enough to really embed it in any way. But it was a real eye-opener, and it was a mixture of really excitement and fascination, and also a kind of insight into it. Felt like there was massive potential there, but also, you know, just like, I guess, any sort of acting city, massive amount of people wanting that same level of potential. But really interesting. I know you went over and you were there for a while. How long were you over there for?
Well, I went over there. Actually, the longest I've only ever spent there was, I think, maybe 2 months. But I went there, you know, to different pockets over a period of like 3 years. What happened was, in 2000, I was, you know, working away, doing quite well in TV. And then in 2000, I think it was 2010, I got offered to do a stint on Holby City. And at the time, I remember it being a little bit ambiguous. Holby City, what is Holby City? Is it drama? Is it soap? What is it? You know, it occupies this strange place in TV. And I just thought, oh, screw it, I'll do it, you know. And I stayed there for a year, and then I stayed there for another year. And I suppose and I found it very, very instructional and time well spent. I worked with some really fantastic people. You're carrying storylines. It is all single camera. It's not, you're not working on 3 cameras, so it's concentrated, it's focused, it's people really trying to do their best under a sort of limited time frame. And I felt after that, I suppose I had a bit of money in my pocket, and I kind of felt, well, I'd love to try, you know, there was a thing, well, do you want to stay here long term, or do you want to try something else? And I figured, no, I really want to give LA a shot, or America a shot. I was in my, I think I was early 30s. And I actually, what happened was I had a knee problem, so I couldn't actually go. I think it was 2012. And I ended up actually doing a film in Ireland with an American director. Her name is Steph Green. And she'd been Oscar nominated for a short film. I think it was the year before, and this was her first feature film. And it was a film with Maxine Peake and an American actor and comedian, Will Forte, who was on Saturday Night Live for years, who actually subsequently became a really good friend. And it was a really, really lovely independent film on a really lovely subject matter of a father suffering a stroke, and then this doctor coming to study him, and how the dynamic within the family shifts as a result of that. So I was playing the father who had the stroke. And it was a gorgeous little film. And I suppose, like a lot of Irish film, it's challenging to find its audience, you know. But then I said to Will, you know, I'll come out to LA and I'll be staying at yours in Santa Monica. And he was like, oh, will you? And I said, yeah. So the following year, 2013, I went out to LA to try the pilot season. So I ended up going out in, I think it was early January. The pilot season doesn't really start. I don't know if the pilot season still goes on, from like late January for about a month. So I had a manager, and I said, right, I'll throw everything at this. I'll go for anything and everything that I can. And sometimes you're going up for, you know, you might go for 3 things in a day, you know, crisscrossing LA, as you know what it's like. And going in, you hit the mark, you turn on the camera, and off you go. You get one shot of it. Thanks very much. No matter how it comes out, off you go. Next. And it's quite a pressured. It was quite a pressured experience. I mean, I took it in a sort of. It felt like you were cramming for your exams. You know what I mean? Be it your leaving cert or your college exams. You know, you could be learning maybe 14, 15 pages of scripts the night before, and you know, just going around the place. There is an intense sense of competition there. There is such a volume of people there, and there's also people who are going for a long time without working as an actor. They might be working as lots of different things. So it was a really competitive environment, but people really push themselves. You know, they turn up dressed for the part. You know, they're in the zone. You know, they're off in a corner. You know, they're keeping themselves to themselves. And when they go in, you know, they're really pumped up, and they're really going for it. So I went, just a number of things, and I did quite well. I screen tested for 2 shows, and one of them was for an ABC, one of the main networks. I tested for the lead in that, and it was going to be one of their new centerpiece shows, and whenever it was going to be, the autumn or something like that. The way it works over there is that before you go in for your screen test, for instance, on a Tuesday morning, as I think it was, they do the deal the week before with your agent or your manager and a lawyer and the network, and they agree that you will be paid X amount of money per episode for the pilot and for the season if it goes ahead. They fax you through the deal. This is everything, and there you go. And then when you sign up, when you turn up for the screen test, they show you the contract, and then you sign the contract. They mic you up, in you go, and there's this phalanx of people in front of you, sitting there, kind of going, right, explain to me why I should pay you all this money to do this job. Why you? You know, that was the sense of it. But you know, I was kind of a bit blasé about it. I just went for it, and I enjoyed it. And then they let you know that they will let you know on, for instance, a Friday morning, you'll get the part or you'll be released. from the contract and go off and do whatever you like. So I waited until the Friday, and then they told me on the Friday, we're not interested in taking this any further. And I thought, oh, that's fine, fair enough. And I hung around LA for a couple of days. And I thought, right, I might as well go back to the UK now, because what's the point in hanging around? Everything was kind of shutting down. And I went off to meet a friend, I remember, for a smoothie. And and then I was thinking, right, I better go back to the house and get my stuff together and catch my flight. And then my manager rang me up and she said, do not get on that plane. They want to reinstate your deal. So either they hadn't found whoever they wanted, or they couldn't agree with whoever it was. And she said, they will let you know. You have to come to my office because they will let us know at 5 p.m. what's happening. I was like, right, okay. So I went to her office. I turned up at about 4:45. We sat there for 15 minutes, and they gave her some live feed on her thing. They throw up your screen test against someone else's again. They compare it. They whittle it down, and then at 5 o'clock she said, you got it. So then I stayed in LA that night, and the following day I flew off to Vancouver. We filmed it for, I think it was 2 weeks. And it was great crack. I mean, absolutely great crack. But it just didn't work out, But it was an interesting experience. And I went back the following 2 years. And I probably didn't have as much luck then. But I just found it quite instructional, you know what I mean? It's how can I say? I mean, it seems like it's just a lot of it is luck, you know what I mean? But how do you create luck? Preparation plus opportunity maybe gets you lucky. I don't know. But they give you a shot at it out there. What I really liked, they're interested. It doesn't matter where you've come from. They're interested in knowing where you're going, where you think you want to go. You know what I mean? They're alive to that. They're open to opportunity. So I liked that. But then people were saying, maybe it's not the best place to be if you're not doing anything. It could become a little self-destructive. If you're not working over there, it's better to maybe go back to what you know best, where you have the support network of friends. And also, I suppose, over the years, the business has become condensed in many respects as to how we communicate. So you can put things on tape, you can send them off to whatever casting directors, wherever they are. They know it's only a flight away, maybe. So it doesn't feel, that geographical expanse probably doesn't feel as big as it was. It's become more condensed. So maybe the sense of opportunity is still live. I don't know. But by and large, I had a positive experience of it, There's so many people. It's a huge volume of people. Everyone, like you say, trying to make it.
I mean, to reflect my kind of experience, which is very limited, very small and the same. I was there for, I think, January to late February, so pretty much around that time. But I found them to be quite professional in that the way in which the auditions were held. There was a different sort of sense of seriousness about them that I kind of appreciated in a way. But I also felt it took me a while to figure out why some of their general meetings were so long. And in hindsight, I think I've realized it's because of what you suggest there around they want to know a little bit about where you're going. And of course, I was like, well, an hour for a general meeting. Okay, I mean, what am I going to talk about for an hour? There's no script. What are we talking about for? And so I had a great time, a little like yourself, just sort of being, I guess, blasé about it. And it occurred to me after a little while, I was like, well, they're clearly giving an hour because they were expecting a lot of confidence and sale, and this is me, and I'm, and I was more interested in having a chat and a laugh to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And one or two really got with that, and struck up a bit of a good relationship in a way, but very different. I mean, I wonder, coming back from that, because I really enjoyed how serious a lot of them took training, because obviously there's not that same drama school. You go for 3 years, you become an actor, and then you leave. There's continual training in a way. And so being in one or two classes and just seeing how seriously they took that was, I think, something I really took a lot away from, going, yeah, I'm quite inspired. And even some of the casting directors who had come from theatre and had a real sort of social consciousness around the work, that I was like, God, God, this really is of value, and you're really going deep with stuff. I was quite impressed. There's things I took away from me that I was like, yeah, you have to be professionally on it. You have to really know why you're doing it. and there's an element of just personal confidence that sort of, I guess, well, why wouldn't you have that? You know, I'm happy to go in and read the speech and be like, here's all of me in this speech, but it made me aware that actually, look, there's a bit of work to be done perhaps on the other side of it, as the hi, I'm Andrew side of it as well.
Yeah.
But what is your sort of learning from that experience? Having come back from it, being out there, what would you say you've taken away?
I felt, certainly my small time, the few times that I dipped my toe into it, they felt they're completely unapologetic. You know what I mean? They certainly, not that I apologize for my space or anything like that, but they don't apologize for space. I mean, they just go in and take the room, and you know what I mean? They'll seize every opportunity that they can. I mean, I've always enjoyed castings. I've really enjoyed going into a room and meeting with people and enjoying that chemistry. I always did, and certainly in America, it was something like, "Hey, you're in the room." It's like, "Well, hey," you know? If you got to go to producer meetings, you know what I mean. The next step on from just going on tape, you're like, "Yeah, all right, man, what's going on?" You know, I really, really loved that. I really embraced it. So I don't know. I suppose that just invigorated me more when I came home. But just small technical things of maybe just, you know, dressing for the role, going into the room, you know, and just really coming into the room and saying, "Hey, this is the guy you want. You know, I'm it. I'm the part." You know what I mean? It's not a case of, "Well, maybe, well, do you fancy this?" It's not. Here it is. You know, I don't know, the sense of preparation. I thought it just upped my game in many more respects. I tell you what, one of the things I found a little disconcerting over there, which I found, I don't know, it really hit me. When I was there, I saw a lot of it. You know, if you were going for, I felt there was so much pressure. I mean, this was probably 7, 8 years ago. There was so much pressure on women. And the amount of pressure, I suppose, they felt that they had to put themselves under. I mean, girls who seemed they were dieting within an inch of their life. And the number of times I saw girls just coming out of casting rooms, just being upset, just crying. You know what I mean? I think I could really kind of, it really brought it home to me. You know, it's tough for most people in this business, but especially women. It was just like, God, I mean, girls just crying. You walked out crying in the car, crying on the steps. You know, it was just really tough. I mean, there is that, I suppose there was a sense of that thing. If there's a real cut-off point, you hit 35, you're past it, you know, or something. I mean, it was, but it just, I suppose it developed in my mind, you know, that sense of, you know, what you can control, be in control of, and the rest you've got to kind of let go of, because, you know, in a sense, the decisions are, in a sense, are out of your control. So just, you know, invest in it what you can. And you can't hide what's in your heart in many respects. If you're a person who's very diligent about going home and learning all the lines, you know, just do that, as opposed to, well, I'm just going to scan over the lines and just go in and give it that. That might work as well, who knows? But be true to your own values, I suppose. Yeah.
It sounds like you've very much found and staying true to your own way of going about that. Like you say, there's, I'm sure, lots of actors who can do that, who can just have a quick look at it, go in, charisma, intuition, instinct, and done. And others need to work in very different ways. But like you say, it does sound like, running with your own values just gives you that sort of foundation that is, that you personally need. Obviously, there's different priorities for you now. There's a small young person in the room next door, and things have, as happens with any career, priorities change continually. But how do you go about keeping that muscle working, keeping your toe in the water, now that you have a very much more important job to do as a father?
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, thousands have gone before me in being able to combine the two, I suppose. It helps, and it both hinders, I suppose. You know, my wife doesn't work in the business, so she offers a different perspective on things. I suppose if you're both in the business, you can kind of interchange in sort of, well, I'm not working, so you can be available to work if something comes up. I suppose in some respects, I feel sometimes I am the primary caregiver. My wife works from about 9 until 5 or 6. When she was on maternity leave, I was working, and we were able to make things work out that way. When COVID struck, everything's kind of shut down. So I suppose I've had a continued sort of honeymoon period of just looking after him. It's been, but before that, I was working during her maternity leave, and then when she went back to work, I suppose I did find it challenging initially. Sense of really having to look after him and being the primary caregiver, and there's a lot of surrendering of your ego and your own needs. It's really, this person comes first in every respect. I've been out to auditions when she's been able to look after him. But since then it's mostly as most parents will know, you can go slightly potty, just repeating the same narrow few games every now and again. So I find it important when I can to try and keep my senses sharp by, as best I can, by just tinkering away a bit of text if I can through the day, whatever it can be, like something random like a sonnet or something, something very slippery, and try and make sense of it. You know what I mean? What occupies that portion of your brain that wants to be creative? You're being physically creative with your son, and there's the wonderful thing, I suppose, about kids or babies. We talk a lot in the business, in the acting business, about your attention to the target or the object outside you, and what's going on outside you. When these, as we all know, little kids turn up, like there's nothing else going on in the world except what's happening right there in that moment between you and them. You're completely absorbed. So I suppose it brings you back to that fundamental principle. You're just like, wow, this is so alive and exciting. I suppose there are the other challenges financially and things like that. You worry about that. That becomes very present. It's something you've just got to take, I think, day by day. I've learned even more. You can't, or if you do worry about it, I found myself just worrying less about it in a strange way. Because as soon as he wakes up and he's there, he's just like, bang, all right, what's going on? And you're just involved in that. Just tip away. I mean, I've tried to do when I've not been working, I try to pick up some teaching, which is something which I find is good, because it also helps you with your own process, financially, but also your own process as well. You can't really explain to someone as clearly and succinctly as possible if you don't understand it yourself first. You know what I mean? It won't be clear for them if it isn't clear to you. So yeah, it's an ongoing thing. I mean, the challenge is just, it changes from day to day. You just respond to it.
What comes across, I think, is that, like you said, that that wonderful sense of we're taking it each day at a time, but waking up with that, right, I'm here, what's happening?
yeah, what's going on, dude? Come on.
Yeah, and maybe that's the best way to serve yourself, because I guess if you jump ahead too far down the road mentally as to what is possible or not possible, then you might be creating stories for yourself that are just a little, too much. To bring us back full circle, and as if we've perhaps been avoiding the question all this time, but yeah, for you, what does it mean to live well as a creative in the world today?
I suppose to live well as a creative is to be creative. As actors, I'm sure there's lots of other type, people you're working with, designers and directors, maybe you're interviewing as well, but you want to do that. If you believe yourself to be an actor, then you want to act. I suppose I get to act lots every day with my kids, playing so many different types of roles, and reading stories would just be wildly creative, and that's great fun. You just think you already think something nuts, But I think to live well, I mean, over the years, not that I was ever, I mean, listen, as much as any guy, I like the crack and I enjoy a drink, but I cut down on a lot of alcohol over the years. I've cut down on a lot of that. I'm a social drinker occasionally. I'm not a a habitual drinker, I suppose. I'm not reaching for the bottle every day, that kind of thing. Yeah, I found that used to sap a lot of energy. And it's, as I've gotten older, it's about where do you get good energy from. I've modified my diet. You know, I try to eat as well as I can. I think I'm also not cautious, but you know, I like to be around people who are very, you know, energized and invigorating and positive in their outlook and interesting and fun. And I've also taken to doing yoga, exercising. You know, I always enjoyed sports and things like that, and you know, the endorphin rushes from exercising. And meditation is something I've taken to recently, in recent times, and I found it really fantastic. You know, during challenging times, it's great. Yoga, and I suppose listening to as much good stuff as I can. You know, whether it's good music or the Irish spiritualist. I suppose he's a spiritualist, John O'Donoghue. Listening to him, I think is very, very good. It's very it's great. It just releases your imagination and your mind into all sorts of different types of phenomena. Yeah, and as much as possible to live well. I think that's not that I live in the imagination, but you know, I remember someone saying it to me years ago. You know, and the imagination it is the most powerful tool an actor has.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it really, really is, and it's about stimulating the imagination and the mind in as many ways as possible. I suppose keeping away from things that cloud you, like, you know, alcohol and drugs and all that kind of stuff. You know, just to, you know, keep your mind and your brain functioning as well as possible. You know. Yeah.
I mean, wow, that sounds like what's really interesting there is it sounds like there's a twofold process at work, and one is taking on of things that really energize you or work well, whether it be meditating and yoga and the reading of things that ignite imagination. But also, I think what's really important is the things that you're cutting out, the things that might be there continually, but now you recognize that they served a purpose in a time, but actually I don't necessarily need those now, and actually I can refine. Sounds like quite a refined place that you're in, the shedding of all these things you don't need, and then just focusing on actually where's the good music, who are the senses of good, and that I think is
I mean, I don't want to come across as too refined. I'm not. I'm listening like anyone. I'm a torrent of emotions the best of times, you know. But it's about, I don't know, it's finding ways of just trying to channel it and to being able to employ it as effectively and as powerfully as you can. Because, you know, I suppose we possess, God, I don't want to sound like Eckhart Tolle or any of these guys. You know what I mean? As much as possible as you can. It's challenging every day to try and return to the now. You know, as you do as an actor, you know, the philosophy of that, being in the moment, how empowering that can be. Mm-hmm. You know, the more you listen, the more you are in the moment, I suppose, and the more just empowering and sort of invigorating that can be, and dynamic. You know, it's such a rush. As I say, it's like an addiction, man. It's just, it's coping with us.
Excellent. You know, that's a whole other episode. But I love we'll come full circle to addiction. But do you know what? I think there's something in that. There's something addictive to acting, and I think a lot of it is learning how to deal with it and work with it well, I guess. And you've definitely got that. So Ed, I can't thank you enough for your time, both socially, but also given that there's a little person next door that also hopefully is still sleeping soundly. But
yes, actually, he hasn't stirred.
Fantastic. But Ed, thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
All right, Andrew.
Take it easy.
God bless.